Talking animals, fairies, beasts, imaginary lands, magic powers? Do these things sound familiar? Do they bring you back to your childhood and the stories that were told to you? Well, if you loved hearing these stories over and over and even reading them yourselves when you got a little older, then you will be glad to know that you aren't too old for these types of stories now. And I'll tell you how. Hi, my name is Elise Monclaw, and I want to tell you about 5 stories that fall into the fantasy genre. All of the books that I will introduce you to are considered modern folk tales. The first book that I would like to share with you is called Just Ella by Margaret Haddix, who has, by the way, won many awards for her books. Welcome to the real world, Cinderella. In this story, instead of reading about a glass slipper, Prince Charming, and happily ever after, you will hear about Ella's boring genealogy lessons, her classes on how to act like a proper lady, and a prince who is not charming. Ella goes to a ball and happens to sweep the prince off of his feet. But it doesn't take her long to realize she is not Her Majesty material. And Prince Charming is actually Prince Boring. Here's an excerpt from the book. "Princess," the lady in waiting to my right hissed and pointed with a severe tilt of her chin. Behind me, a servant girl darted in to wipe up the single drop of soup that had fallen from my bread to the tablecloth. Madame Bisset, seated catty-corner and 5 seats down, rose and came to whisper in my ear, "Only commoners place their bread into the soup. You must never do that again." If you loved the story of Cinderella when you were growing up, then you will enjoy this modern twist on the old fairy tale. Just Ella by Margaret Haddix. The next book that I would like to introduce you to is a retelling of Rapunzel. It's called Rapunzel's Revenge by Shannon Hale. Shannon Hale is a Newbery Award-winning author and best-selling author of 15 children and young adult books. Her mother said that she was a storyteller from birth, and she actually teamed up with her husband, Dean Hale, to write this story. Rapunzel doesn't think anything's wrong with her life. She lives in a beautiful villa, has all the food that she could possibly eat. She has servants and guards. Rapunzel was being brought up in this beautiful place by her mother, or who she thought was her mother. Day after day of playing in the beautiful garden, finally Rapunzel's curiosity began to grow. What lies beyond the walls of my garden? As she gets older, her curiosity gets the best of her, and she finally manages to climb the garden walls that she has been trying to climb for years. She gets a look into the industrial wasteland, the starving workers, the vicious guards, and her real mother that lie beyond the wall. Rapunzel's real mother was one of the workers dressed in rags. Well, when Rapunzel learned this, she is determined to rescue her real mother and to seek revenge on her kidnapper mother, who used her special powers to keep Rapunzel from escaping all these years. In this story, Rapunzel's long braids are used for way more than just a ladder. She uses them to perform daring rescues and heroic feats. Her new friend, Jack, yes, that's Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, helps her and gives her the courage she needs to seek revenge and justice. Well, you'll have to read the book to see if Rapunzel is able to rescue her mother and seek revenge on her would-be mother. Rapunzel's Revenge by Shannon Hale. The next book that I will share with you was written by Robin McKinley. In 1984, Mrs. McKinley wrote a book called The Hero and the Crown. She won the Newbery Medal as the year's best new story for this book. The book that I would like to share with you today is called Beauty, a retelling of Beauty and the Beast by Robin McKinley. This is one of my favorites because of the forbidden love and the fact that I think a lot of teens today can relate to beauty. As a young child, Beauty, whose real name is Honor, is given the nickname Beauty by her beautiful sisters, but she never really feels worthy of her name. She feels like she's too tall, she's too thin, she's awkward. But Beauty grows up in a wealthy family until one day her dad loses his fortune. All of the ships that he owns are lost, so the family is forced to move out to the country. There's a nearby forest in their new land, and it's just a really strange forest, really creepy. Well, over the years, Beauty becomes used to the hard work and the peasant life. And then one day her dad decides he's going to go back to the city and try to find one of his lost ships. Well, on his way back, he wanders through the forest to return to the city, and he gets lost in the forest. And this is when he comes across the Beast's castle. Well, at the Beast's castle, he plucks a rose for Beauty because she had asked him to bring her back a rose from his trip. So he does, and this angers the Beast. He takes her father as the prisoner. Well, you'll have to read the book to find out the terrible deal that Beauty's father has to make with the Beast for his release, and to see if Beauty finds true love and happiness. A retelling of Beauty and the Beast by Robin McKinley. Fourth book on my list is called Crazy Jack by Donna Jo Napoli. Donna Jo Napoli has written many children's books that have been translated to Chinese, Danish, German, and many other languages. She has won many awards for her writings. Well, Crazy Jack starts out sounding like your typical Jack and the Beanstalk until its twists are revealed. Well, when Jack was 4 years old, his father gambled away the family's fortune. And he climbs a mountain and accidentally steps off of a cliff, never to be seen again. Well, for years, Jack is distraught over his father's disappearance. And he tries relentlessly to climb the same mountain and find the cliff, hopefully finding his father. Well, much to his mother's chagrin, one day, Jack meets a fairy on the street, and he trades the family's only cow for 7 rainbow-colored magical beans. That's where he gets his name, Crazy Jack, because people think he's crazy for doing this. Well, the beans yield a very strong beanstalk, and Jack uses this beanstalk to go on a quest to find his father. Once Jack enters the giant's world, he finds much more than he imagined. He finds romance, adventure, acceptance, and healing from his father's death. Will you join Jack on his adventure? I hope so. Crazy Jack by Donna Jo Napoli. And finally, we get to the last book on my list, Spindle's End, also by Robin McKinley. Robin McKinley has written many books that are a retelling of fairy tales, so if you like the books that I've mentioned to you today, you can look her up and find more. Spindle's End is a retelling of the old favorite Sleeping Beauty with a magic twist. Rosie, who was an infant princess, was given 21 names on her name day, and she was also to receive 21 fairy gifts. Well, the first 20 gifts she received really weren't that interesting to her as she got older. They were golden hair and long ringlets. But the 21st gift that she received was actually a curse placed on Rosie by an evil fairy named Pernicia. Well, the curse promises that on Rosie's 21st birthday, she will prick her finger on a spindle and fall into a deep sleep. Sound familiar? Here is where the twists and turns begin. After hearing of the terrible curse, Rosie is rescued by 2 fairies and taken away to be raised in a village that is filled with magic. There is magic everywhere in this village. Here is an excerpt from the book. The magic in that country was so thick and tenacious that it settled over the land like chalk dust and over floors like slightly sticky plaster dust. If you lived in that country, you had to descale your kettle of its incrustations of magic at least once a week. Well, Rosie grew up to be headstrong, stubborn, and intelligent like a lot of teens these days. And she has her own special magic, which is talking to animals. Well, eventually, Rosie begins becomes a horse doctor. Well, at 20 years old, Rosie was visited by a mysterious fairy who tells Rosie that she is not an ordinary maiden, but she is the country's hidden princess. With the help of this mysterious fairy and her friends, both human and animal, Rosie sets out on an adventure to stop Pernicia and therefore lift the curse. You will have to read the book to find out if Rosie can be saved from the evil fairy's curse. Spindle's Inn by Robin McKinley. All of the books that I've shared with you today are modern folk tales which fall under this fantasy genre. If you still aren't convinced that you aren't too old for these fairy tales, then let me tell you that the recommended age for all of the books that I've read to you is between the age of 12 and 18. One of them is even as young as 10-year-olds, but goes up to the age of 14. So, go ahead, give them a try.